Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew and today we're doing another figure review. Today we're doing a figure review of the Playmates Godzilla Evolved, or Evolved Godzilla. It's an evolved Godzilla, so Godzilla Evolved, whatever it may have. I'm gonna be rather honest. I'm also gonna talk about my opinion on the design as we go, since really making like a full video towards the design now that I'm actually holding a figure of the actual design in hand. When am I really going to talk about it? On Matthew Mumbles? Possibly. But really, let's go ahead and talk about this figure, which, let's be honest here, there's a lot of things to say about it. So, first up is sculpt and paint. The sculpting department is rather consistent with all of Playmates' previous other figures, with a variety of different materials used to make it. As the head is made of a softer plastic, the spines are made of a softer plastic, the arms are made of softer plastic, the feet and the tail are all soft plastic, while the legs and the torso itself are all made of hard plastics. But how well does that really conjoin into figure form? Well, let's see. The head is actually pretty well detailed. Like, I'm actually kind of shocked with the amount of detail they were able to put into this thing. Of course, the entire body is casted in a much more bluish, greenish type wash. And on it, or not really wash, it's just more of a dyed plastic, I assume, because it's a lot more colored than that of the previous Godzilla figures that Playmates previously put out. Here at the face, though, we can definitely see the eyes are very much big and orange, and at first I was a bit put off by it looking at the promotional photos, but actually having it in hand, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Honestly, I thought these things would be, like, way bigger. And it's weird that the 2014 eyes have bugged me a bit more than this one, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure all they just did was take the eyes from the previous, or the 2014 figure, and put it on this one. But looking at it from the front here, definitely got a bit of derpage going on, nothing too bad. Teeth are actually pretty well painted. This might be the cleanest painting I've seen on a Godzilla figure since Shin Godzilla version 2. And like, this is actually really well applied. It's not like the Heat Ray Godzilla where it's so mismatched, it's not even funny. Here, Playmates really upgraded and amped up the amplification game, which I'm really happy about. Also, the tongue is painted really well too, so hopefully there's no scrapage happening this time around. No more color within the mouth, but there is like a bit of a spray at the neck that kind of goes down towards the body. But at the top, we have some orange, red painted fins, which we'll get to the fins in just a sec. But moving on down to the body does take a bit of a dive when it comes to the quality consistency, and we definitely see a bit more of like the cheaper plastic used in this specific version. Because here, a lot of the more finer details are much more smoothed out, and I definitely think that's a bit of a downgrade compared to the Heat Ray Godzillas and the previous Godzillas that Playmates has released, because the torso was actually pretty detailed on some of them, i.e. the radio tower and Heat Ray. But for what detail is here, it's still there, it's just a lot more mellowed over. But definitely smoothed out like parts here for the articulation. We'll get to that in a sec. But the arms here are definitely well detailed. Unfortunately, the shoulder spike is not painted, which is weird because the Battle Roar, I believe, had painted. I might be thinking of the Giant. I'm not sure if the Battle Roar had any painted spines like that. But the complete underbelly is made of a kind of like an olive green spray and looks really nice. Also, both of the hands are in fact painted that same olive green color, and unfortunately, again, are not painted on the spines or the shoulder spikes. But again, the detail on the arms are really well done, and I gotta applaud Playmates where it's due. Same thing applies to the legs, which are a lot skinnier than that of the other Godzillas, but still looks rather fine on its own. The detailing, because I feel like it's a bit more compact as far as design-wise, the detail's a bit more cramped together, and kind of makes it pop. So I guess you could say it's kind of like an advantage of sorts. Maybe. Really depends on what your mileage is. But the feet are also painted the same olive green, which I do appreciate. And of course, it's in that standard walking position with one toe a bit bent up and the other toe, well, completely flat on the ground. I don't know why Playmates does that. Like, do they think that it makes it more dynamic? It does, but I don't think that's why some people want to buy this, because people want it kind of basically posed. But I mean, the posing is actually kind of cool. Again, reminiscent of that of him on the aircraft carrier. In fact, you can kind of like recreate it almost like him like reaching out to get Kong before he gets like his face completely smashed right back. Which I do think he does get punched in the new movie. I mean, of course he can get punched because he keeps messing with the big ape. Of course, the big ape is gonna lose, but who cares? Um, and of course, let's go ahead and actually let's talk about the tail. The tail is actually again really well done, and it's this entire piece is made of just flexible rubber, and does have a bit of flexibility to it, even though it's not really supposed to move aside from, well, certain joint. But from here to here, it's entirely sprayed, which I need to commend Playmates because that is also an immediate upgrade towards their original Tails, where they just did a Bandai and stopped right midway. However, it also has a bit of, well, it's very minor and more like a minor nitpick, but mine has a bit of excess plastic more towards the tail tip, like right where the tip of my thumbnail is. It's getting blurry as I go in. I don't know why it's doing that. But for what is here and for what I think like the tail has to present, it's a long, nice tail, and especially like you got like the nice fins, and also goes without mentioning the Thagomizer. Was pretty mixed when I heard about this, but honestly it kind of grew on me, and I'm kind of glad that it has something to kind of complement itself towards Shimu's Thagomizer. But that being said, I also think that the spray is a bit on the more one-sided because you look at it this way and you definitely see a lot more gray areas, or green areas. You look at it this way and there's a lot less of them, which kind of leads me to believe that they only did one spray and that was it. Granted, of course, these things got to be mass-produced, but I feel like there should be a bit more consistency with that. Feel me? And of course, looking at the underside of the tail, it does not have that kind of like olive green, but more like the same kind of blue and the same kind of blue-green kind of color the main body is made of, and it overall looks pretty good. Also, that underside, though, looks really freaking sweet. That really looks like a dinosaur tail. You thought Godzilla didn't look like a dinosaur? Now he does. Then again, what kind of dinosaur looks anorexic like this? So, now let's talk about the spines. Overall, it's definitely an improvement over that of the King of the Monsters figures in that they beefed up the size of, or King of the GVK figures, I mean it's the same design almost, where they beefed up the overall girth of the spines, excuse me, and so there's like no jagged edges, but it still feels, it's a little thicker than that of the spines from previous figures, which I do like. And I do like the design, how they kind of like extended it and definitely gave it a bit of a more angular look. And that being said, the translucent plastic used, I think, is the same type they used on Mechagodzilla, the battle version. Not the battle roar, just the battle version. And it honestly looks really sweet. Now, as far as the transition goes between the spines on the back of the head, the tail, and the back itself, it it doesn't look bad in person. I assure you that once you actually see it in person, there is still a major difference, yes, but it's not as bad as I would say it is on camera, because on camera it really just shows like two different shades. Well, it is two different shades in real life. Trust me, you're gonna get used to this thing really quickly, at least if you're me. So, with that being said, overall the sculpt and paint, it's an improvement. I would say the only downgrade necessarily is really just the sides of the sides and not having like any dry brushing, unlike that of the Heat Ray Godzilla. But with that being said, it's still rather rock solid, so I gotta give Playmates where credit is due. Alright, next segment is articulation. Now, it basically has nothing changed aside from maybe some more flexible joints. But let's go ahead and see. The jaw is on a hinge, so you can close up about that far. Open up about that far. There is a bit of an overbite. Yeah, overbite. But it's not as bad as saying that as the Playmates 2014. So it can open about that far. The head, it looks like it's on a joint, but much like the previous incarnations, nope, it's not. I don't know why they keep doing this. Like, they know people want to move the head, but obviously it's the same deal. It's the big square peg, and if you notice right here, that's a seam line, and if you push hard enough, that's going to start splitting it, and it's going to eventually unplug the entire figure. So I would not recommend that. However, the arms are able to rotate a full 360, mind you. It is worth noting that on this version of the figure, that there is no out and in motion. However, on the Titan Evolution figure, there is a swivel hinge, which why they didn't include it on this one is beyond me. But they did it with Shimu, so I don't see why they wouldn't do it with Godzilla. Maybe because he's a quadruped, but Kong and Scar King, I mean, they can crawl on all fours, so who cares? So there's nothing at the elbow and wrists. Nothing at the waist either. But there is a nice rotation here at the leg, which can go up about that far, back about that far, and no in and out motion, but can rotate at the foot, both sides. A little bit creaky, a little bit stiff. And this one can go up about that far, and backwards about that far. I gotta stop bumping into my camera. And the tail can rotate at the base of it and has one singular ball joint. There's no wire in the tail, although I kind of wish there was, just to allow for a bit of movement. So when it comes to articulation, he is decently posable. He's about the same as the previous Heat Ray and Radio Tower Godzillas. And it's honestly fine, you know, take it or leave it as you will. But honestly, it's rather rock solid. Next up is accessories, and unfortunately, they pulled a Ghidorah and did not include anything. Just kidding. He comes with a beam effect, which it's a very small beam effect. Probably because again, children don't really like the long accessories, but us collectors do. So again, I was initially talking about the beam itself. I was initially disappointed because it looks too flame-like. I know it's radioactive fire, but there's a difference between this and this. This looks more plasma-like, which is something I expect to see out of Godzilla. This just looks a little too toy. I know it's a toy, but when we go from this to this, not to mention they're up close to the same length, but it just doesn't feel the same. Also, this one feels a lot more brittle, although it is mildly flexible, so I would consider the beam itself to be a downgrade. However, what's considered an upgrade is the connection of the beam itself, so I guess it's kind of like a trade-off. It has a much better looking peg, and actually has a much better groove in the mouth, so you can actually open up the jaw. Oh wait, that's as far as it opens. So you can actually plug in there and ram that thing right into Godzilla's mouth, and there you go. He's spitting out the beam. Now, I must stress that this thing has a great connection. Like, I'm literally holding it by its beam, and it's like not even letting go. If I try doing that with the regular Heat Ray Godzilla, then that's like gonna plop right out of the mouth. However, I also need to stress that it can also come at a bit of a cost, considering the fact that if you wiggle the beam, it also wiggles the top half of the mouth from the hinge of the jaw, which could eventually lead to some sort of pull and tear as throughout time goes. So, for some size comparisons, here he is next to what are basically, well, the only other GXK figure I own at the moment, the Playmates Shimu, and Godzilla and Kong from the first movie. And I did want to just bring this up that I know a lot of people will want me to compare these two. I will do a more in-depth video, but to basically summarize, I think that like overall he's an upgrade from him in a lot of different ways, but he has some things that I like about him more than the Godzilla Evolved. But as you can see, I don't own the new Kong with Beast Glove and Scar King or Psuko and Doug yet, but I do know how to get those. So that being said, there you go. And for the second round of size comparisons, here he is next to some other MonsterVerse Godzilla and Mechagodzilla figures with the 2014 Godzilla, as I mentioned earlier, and the two Playmates Mechagodzillas with the battle version and the standard version. And I did want to bring this up as well, that I honestly feel like, as far as like design goes, he may have been a result of him. Because, think about it, they both have elongated arms, extended range, bigger heads, red fins, and on a much more slender like build, allowing for better agility. And they both have some sort of weapon at the end of their tail. Of course, organically, there's no way you can really replicate this, so I guess this is the best way to go as far as like organically recreating Mechagodzilla. Obviously, you're gonna have something else to really counter the beams, or sorry, the missiles. But as well, I wanted to bring up the eyes on the 2014 figure, as I personally am believing that they definitely took the same eyes from the 2014 figure and put it on the new one. Like, that is strikingly similar. Same color, same shape, same basically everything. Also, just to throw this in, there's the old Mechagodzilla. And for the last batch of size comparisons, here he is next to the NECA Godzilla 2014, still my all-time favorite figure in the entire collection, and the Playmates Godzilla 2004 standard version. Or both standard, the 6-inch version. There really was no standard version, because this is standard. They never made a Spitfire or anything. And ultimately, while I do like this, I honestly kind of miss this. Also, it is kind of worth noting that his design kind of feels more inspired by 2004 with the much more slender build. Although, again, that could just be a result of Mechagodzilla, as he screams more MG than this one does. So overall, what do I think of this figure? From its sculpt and paint, articulation, and accessories, it's an overall fine piece. I like it. I really do. And ultimately, this might be like the best Playmates Godzilla that we've gotten in a long time. Because while I do like Playmates Godzilla figures, they're just not my core of tea. You know, it's cup of tea. Core of tea. That's a new saying. It's just not my core of what I really want. I like hyper articulated figures, which is why I was so into NECA, but at the same time like them kind of as cheap as possible, which is why I didn't like Monster Arts. That being said, Playmates is not a bad way to go if you're looking for a much more casual figure experience or just want to buy something for your kids. Because let's be real here, this is a kid's toy and it will always be a kid's toy regardless of how you put it. But I also just want to say that if you're looking for a Godzilla Evolved, like, you must have one right now in your collection, this is probably your best way to go. Because the Titan Evolved, again, that's like a kid's gimmick toy, and the giant one probably ain't doing anyone any favors unless you want just a giant Godzilla. But then again, you can just get the RC Godzilla, because that has like better sculpting and better detailing. Maybe not so much posability, but that's an RC. But it is also interactable. But with that being said, that's my personal recommendation. I like it. Overall, I rate it 8.5, I'm going to say. I like it a lot. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you guys liked it, definitely subscribe to the channel. Believe in Jesus, accepting Him as your Lord and Savior today. I spread the gospel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone. God bless. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're doing another figure review. Today we're doing a figure review of the Playmates MonsterVerse Godzilla with Heat Ray. What? What do you mean we already did this review? Oh, as it would turn out, years ago, Playmates released a figure also titled Godzilla with Heat Ray from the Monsterverse, and it was for Godzilla vs. Kong, not Godzilla Kong the New Empire. Um, but I think, like, of all the GXK figures, this one was the one I was looking forward to the least. Because, I mean, it's just to, like, give some spoilers to the review. I mean, you're already watching it, so it's not really spoiler, but we haven't covered the sections yet. It's essentially the same figure we got back in 2020. Yes, not 2021, but 2020. Back when Godzilla vs. Kong was about to make its way. But just with a bit of changes here and there. But what we're going to be covering is this figure on its own merit, not comparing it to the original, and not the radio tower one in specific. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the figure. For sculpt and paint, taking a look at the head, I will say in comparison to the past releases, not just the older Heat Ray Godzilla, but the past releases, the head looks a lot better this go around. It's very hard to tell at first glance, but they actually gave it a tad bit more detail as far as where the detail actually is, and applied the paint really, really well. For example, here on the eye, it's still a bit mismatched, but it's in a lot better of a position where it's looking forward rather than kind of back here or on the eyelid as one of the older releases had. Yikes. But overall, the detailing got a lot better, and even though this is just kind of a big rubbery piece, it still looks really well done. And even taking a look at the other side, which again looks really well done. I mean, you can kind of see the teeth, the gums in there, and even the eye cal, the application, it's not bad at all. Like, I will say, maybe some dry brushing would have brought out the details more, because it is very glossy. But it still looks really good. And even when you just rub your finger down it, you can still feel all the intricate little details. Looking inside the mouth, you can actually see that there is somewhat of a sculpt for a tongue. It's very hard to see, but you can kind of see a little bulge in the pink paint where the gums are, and that's supposed to be the tongue. And the teeth are painted a lot better as far as, like, application itself goes. However, I will say it's still a bit of a problem when they're painted more on the inside of the mouth rather than the outside. So it is a bit off as far as, like, the application. It's maybe not the application itself. Maybe this is how it's supposed to look. Because if you did it too far off to one side, then this part of the teeth would show, that part wouldn't. However, the eyes, again, this is proof that Playmates can do eyes. At least they still look goofy. Yes, a little mismatched, but it's a lot better. Taking a look at the torso and the arms here, you'll definitely see that the arms are definitely a lot detailed thanks to the fact that they are rubber extensions, and they honestly look really, really well done. And I will say even the sides of the body got a bit of an upgrade as far as detail is concerned, although they are made of the hard plastic instead of just the rubbery vinyl-like material, but again, you can still see the amazing amount of detail that goes from here to here, and it honestly just looks great. And say even for the front piece, which, yes, we are getting to a certain part of the figure, but we'll cover that in accessories. But as you can definitely see, the fingernails are in fact painted, so I like how they kept this one around. I will say again, but it is kind of a bummer that this one does not have the dry brushing that you found on the original. I know I said I would judge it on its own merit, but being almost a retooling of it, it's kind of a disappointing factor where that's the only thing they didn't keep as far as, like, the application itself goes. They improved on almost everything else, but they didn't keep the dry brushing, which I think is kind of a missed opportunity, especially because it's the same price as the original was. But for what is here, it's definitely really well detailed, and even, like, the chest is actually a lot more detailed than the original one was, because at this point I might as well just start comparing it to the original, but who cares. You can actually kind of see, again, material difference with the you-know-what piece, but it still looks really well done. Really well, like, defined detail that I would not expect on a Playmates figure. Next, let's move on to the legs. And I will say that the legs are in a very interesting stance, but as far as like the overall detail goes, again, gotta hand it to Playmates. They really amped up the detail here. Because I can rub my finger on here and really feel all the bumps and crevices, and it all feels really good. Honestly, like it looks really great. And even the crotch region looks great. I'm never saying that again. And what's even a bonus is they kept the claw paint on the toes too. However, I will say I'm a bit disappointed with how the big toes look, because on the original they were a bit sharper. Here they're bigger, which kind of makes it look like either a defect or a bootleg. Not a very good look there, Playmates. However, what's the main difference here is that on the bottom, they're hollowed out. The original was not like that, which I find interesting. And also, the sides of the tail, they still suffer from that unfortunate problem where they are unfortunately sprayed or smoothened over. Next, we're going to take a look at the spines, which, again, I will say that the sculpting is really good. I love how accurate, as far as like the shape is concerned, it is to the movie. And honestly, I would really love to see some like high definition version of these spines. I guess Haya does that. But it actually is not translucent this time, which I find really interesting, as they actually took the spines from the radio tower Godzilla and put them on this one, which, not that that's a bad thing, but I really like that, this new kind of change, because at least it'll blend kind of better with the spines on the tail. Speaking of which, the spines on the tail. And can I just say, of all the things that are on this figure, the tail got the biggest upgrade. Because look at that detail work. Like, I'm actually serious. This looks like a completely different brand. Like, I cannot stress how well we go from this to smoothened out plastic like that. Like, this looks phenomenal. And I will say again, the spray looks really nice up until they stop right here. But at the very least, it's closer towards the tip. I kind of wish they'd just go full tip, all the way from the tip to the base of the head, where they didn't even bother painting the back of the head, but it still looks fine. But this tail, it's in a different position than it was last time, being like kind of on the ground and then swooping up and then kind of curling in almost like an S. This looks great, honestly. And I kind of wish almost that the entire figure was casted in kind of rubber vinyl and it had the detail work of the tail, because of how like immaculate it looks. It seriously looks that good. And also the spray itself just looks great. So overall, the sculpting paint may not be the most strongest attribute of this figure, but for what it is, it's honestly really good. Judging it on its own merit, it is fantastic and even improves some things on the original. That being said, some drawbacks are not that much dry brushing and smoothened out tail, which I would have liked to see. But other than that, I would say that it is a really good one. Posability time, and if you already know how the game is played, then nothing new is actually, no, that's not true. There's one thing that's new. But let's go ahead and angle the camera up so we have it eye level to Godzilla. All right, there we go. Jaw. It closes and opens on a hinge. Now, on this at least on my copy, it's actually pretty symmetrical to the face, which I do like, but it's also really tight. Like, it was not this tight on the original release, which I honestly do find bit odd, but hey, I'm not gonna question it. There's no head swivel. Same thing, big square peg. Do not twist this. I don't care if it looks like it has movement and it moves a little bit. Do not move it. You're gonna end up splitting this plastic, and it started happening to mine on the original. Moving on down to the shoulders, here we've got swivels that can go all the way around. Nothing too crazy. There's no in and out motion, sadly, unlike the Titan Evolution Godzilla, as you can see here. Nothing at the chest, but the legs do feature that standard kind of like rotation, backwards and forwards, and they don't go out to the side, but they do go. This one goes back about that far. Actually, no, back about that far, up about this far, and cannot rotate at all. But the feet, this is the new addition. On the original, the feet plugged into the legs on a big square peg. This one doesn't do that. Instead, both legs can actually just demonstrating this one can kick up about that far, backwards about that far. And both legs can rotate a full 360 degrees. And at the tail, we have one big ball joint. This one feels like it has less range than the older one did, but can still get some poses. You can go like down about that far, up about that far, to the left about, I want to say like that, to the right about that far, and can actually rotate a full 360 degrees. So as far as posability goes, he's not the most posable thing in the world like Monster Arts, NECA, and Haya, but it's still like a serviceable figure as far as posability goes. Next, let's go over the accessories, which he actually comes with two of them. We'll go after the second one, but let's talk about the heat ray, which this is actually a new sculpt that they created themselves. And I gotta say to the sculptor at Playmates, you did a phenomenal job molding this. This is probably my favorite effect part from the entire line. That's how good this is. It's very reminiscent of the Mezco beam, as I pointed out in my unboxing, but it's not the same mold. The two of them end differently, and even though they are similar looking, they're made of completely different plastics. Like this one's rubbery, but it feels a lot more stiff because of how girthy it is. But in order to plug it in, it's obviously a lot darker, I feel like, than it needs to be, but hey, it's a new beam effect, what might I say. There's a peg hole at the top of the mouth, and you're going to want to aim the ball joint up, and just, I would say, with as minimal pressure as you can, put it in there, and boom, you are good to go. However, I do need to warn this, since this is technically the same figure, just retooled. On my original, over time, with constant push-ins and push-outs, you're gonna start to scuff the paint in the jaw. So do this to your own liking. And with, of course, like, really, really big caution. So just note that over time, if you keep putting the beam in and out, and rotating inside, you're gonna end up scraping up against the paint inside the gums, which I know will happen over time because let's just say that this, as far as paint goes, it's not the best. But also the beam is actually kind of smaller. It's actually kind of bigger than the original one, but it's still on the small side. But the second accessory is that they brought back the battle damage for this release. And if you're wondering, there's like a little scab, and you can just peel it off like that and reveal some wounds. Look at that. And if you're wondering, no, Godzilla does not receive this in the movie. This is literally just what the previous Godzilla with Heat Ray and Radio Tower had, which why they brought it back for this one, but didn't do it with the other GXK figures is such an oddity. Like, a kid's gonna wonder, why does my Godzilla normal one have rib cage and Kong doesn't, and the other Godzilla doesn't? Well, it's just because they reused it. But for the sculpted details, you can actually see some like muscle and ribs in there. Of course, anatomically speaking, this is not what Godzilla's ribs look like, because we see in the GVK when Godzilla is pinned against a building and he gets kicked by Mechagodzilla in the with his shin. You can actually see Godzilla's ribs like glow for a second. This is not what it looks like. So, anatomically speaking, no, that's not what his ribs look like, but that is a gruesome detail, and it's actually a much more shinier red. The original release here on the right actually has a bit of a more duller red in comparison to the much more shinier red, which, in order to actually give the illusion of blood, I kind of do support this. But also, just to add some battle damage talk, I think that this is actually the first Godzilla movie that Godzilla does not bleed in GXK. Or at least as far as MonsterVerse is concerned, because he bled in 2014, King of the Monsters, and GVK, but not in GXK, unless he like bled via the Battle of Tiamat. But there was no blood, unless he did get cut like he did in the comics. and his wounds just healed up when he evolved. But that being said, I didn't really see any blood, so maybe that is what happened, but I didn't see any. And for some quick size comparisons, here he is next to Godzilla Evolved, Shimu, and Doug, the best anime solo in the world. And as you can see, he's kind of in scale with everyone. Maybe not Shimu. Shimu's supposed to be like a bit up to here as far as size it goes, but I don't imagine Shimu getting that big as far as this scale goes. But for what's here, it's definitely serviceable, and I definitely like this scale. And here he is next to the monkeys of the GXK movie, with Kong with the Beast Glove, the Scar King with Whip Slash, and the Suko without Doug. But again, as you can see, he's definitely the biggest of the bunch, but definitely, I would say, on par in terms of quality. Maybe not so much Kong, but definitely on par in terms of quality. And for the last, well, not the last size comparison, but a big size comparison is with the Monsters 2021, NECA V2 2019, and the Hiya Toys 2021, which now that this guy's released and has a few changes, we could theoretically do a rematch between all these four guys. What do you say? And for the size comparison you guys have probably been waiting for, here he is compared to all the other Playmates Godzilla Monsterverse figures that I currently own, with the Monsterverse original release Godzilla with Heat Ray, the Battle Roar Godzilla from GVK, not GXK, and the Radio Tower Godzilla, which, again, I'll put in a better size comparison, but here, like, actually, wait a minute. I just realized these spines are probably molded in black plastic and just have the paint application of him, so these spines don't directly come from him. So maybe these are just like a new mold with a new molded plastic, I should probably say. Not the same, not different sculpt or different mold, it's just molded in a different plastic. Cause see that's black, that's gray. Very interesting. And for the final size comparison, here he is next to the NECA Godzilla 2014, still my all-time favorite figure in the entire collection, and the Playmates Godzilla 2004 from the Toho Classic Series line. And so overall, what do I think of this figure? He's not bad, honestly. I would honestly go as far as say that he is great. There's only one big problem though. If you already own this figure, you really don't need this. Especially if you own both the original Heat Ray Godzilla or any of its many variants featuring Radio Tower Godzilla, the Supercharged Godzilla, the Hong Kong Battle Godzilla, the one that came in the Hong Kong Battle Box, or the one that came in the Radio Tower, the Hollow Earth Battle set. That is 6 different versions, and here comes an incoming 7th. That being said, you really don't need this. Especially if you're a GXK completionist, you can literally skip out on this release and be totally fine. Unless you really want that beam effect, and you really like the new stuff. But I'll give it this. It's not a straight up re-release. That's what I like. They gave it a new beam. They gave it a new leg sculpt, which I don't think I mentioned. Yeah, it is slightly repositioned. It's a bit skinnier slightly, but it's still like chunky. And they gave it a new tail and dorsal fins. But they also took out the dry brushing and still kept the smoothened out tail despite detailing up almost everything else. Which I don't really like those parts. But aside from it, it's a serviceable, cheap figure that you can literally just walk into Walmart or Target, or Toys R Us if your country still has it, and pick it up. It is $10. You literally cannot go wrong with $10. And honestly, again, if you own the original, don't need it. If you don't own the original, go ahead and pick it up. It is right there waiting for you. But with that being said, if you're in it, but here's like my actual like full-on final recommendation. If you want a kid's toy for your kids, this is fine. It's $10 again, but if you're more into the adult collectibles, go with NECA for resale at like $30 to $50 on Mercari, is that what it's called, or eBay? The Monsters one, because Monsters just came out with a new Empire GXK figure in the pre-evolved form, or Haya with its original Hero, the one I just showed, the one in the translucent scheme, or an upcoming UV light version from this movie. So you got options for the adult collectors. This is definitely a kid's toy and should be treated as a kid's toy, not a higher end figure. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. If you guys liked it, definitely subscribe to the channel. Believe in Jesus, accept him as Lord and Savior today, spread the gospel, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace everyone, God bless. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe. With that being said, welcome back to another review. My name is Matthew, and today we're doing a figure review of the Godzilla vs. Shimu Walmart exclusive 2-pack diorama set from Godzilla Kongthenewempire from Playmates Toys. This is the second set of the Godzilla Kongthenewempire collection. And basically, we're just going to be reviewing the whole thing here. So, we previously reviewed the Kong vs. Scar King set. If you want to watch it, it's the newest video before this one. So, definitely watch it on my Playmates list. So, with that being said, let's dive into it. First up, we're going to take a look at Godzilla himself. And this applies to both Godzilla and Shimu. These are merely just repaints. So, it's going to be the same exact figure, just with different paint. Well, at least for the most part. So, what do we got? Well, first we have the head. And the head has the signature orange eye with the black pupil. Pretty sure y'all are accustomed to it by now, because I've taken a look at the original figure like who knows how many times. We have the orange spikes back here that are like trying to lead into the translucent fins. And we do have the signature teeth paint. And, of course, we have the tongue that's painted pink, like a pinkish red. However, the new addition is the blue spray. And it's on Godzilla's bottom jaw and sprays onto the neck with the gills. And it kind of like goes upward towards the top part, really giving it a, like, illuminating effect. And I do think, well, it's a bit heavy-handed. I think that they had the right intention of giving it, like, this beautiful blue spray. Like, this actually looks really well done. And, going on down to, actually, we're going to start with the stuff that you're already accustomed to. We're going to start with the dorsal plates here. The translucent fins are still molded the same way the original one is. So we have pretty much like translucent spines, gummy plastic, softer details like on the back side here. And then we have like the arms. No paint on the back spikes for the shoulders or elbows, which weirdly enough, they are painted on the back of the box of this set, which I don't know why they'd paint them there, but not here. And, of course, we have the claws, which are also going to be painted, except for the thumb. Actually, no, the thumb has the paint underneath, but the blue gets so coated up. And then you get to, like, more of the blue, you still get, like, the same detailing, like, all the same ridges. Still the same pose, where one arm's, like, more grabbing up forward. This one is just kind of more relaxed up to the side. That type of thing. And of course, more or less the same detail. Also, Spike still looks nice regardless if it's painted or not. Although it does kind of look like it's a broken bone. The leg here looks pretty well done in that like almost darker blue plastic. It's more of a blue than a green, but still painted pretty well. We have like some more of the same ridges and detailing going down to the bottom of the feet where they get like the olive green paint. Same paint as the nails are, but you can see them more here because they don't feature that very obvious blue paint. And speaking of the blue paint, that is pretty much the defining characteristic of this Godzilla. Where right at the armpits, you see like darker blues, and then the rest is like a lighter blue, almost like Toy Story Andy's bedroom type color. Like that's essentially a sky blue. That's basically what we're dealing with here. And you get that caked on pretty much on the outskirts of the arm, like right in here, and then you get them right in here within the legs, all the way roughly around down here, and then you kind of get it right to where the tail stops in the package, and then the rest here it's not really painted, but you do get it's actually there as shown here, but there is the paint underneath. The olive green from the stomach. So there is some color variety, which is nice to see. And I definitely think overall, like, it has a much more neater presentation than the original one does. Not to dunk on the original. I think it honestly looks more movie accurate. quote unquote, but this still looks really popish. And I do like how this is. It's probably my favorite of the set, probably just because I just like, I'm a sucker for the blue. Plus, not to mention, the clash between the blue on the front and the red on the back just mixes well beautifully together. And it's like probably one of my favorite things. However, we have the return of the it's kind of like salmon pink color on the tail, and it is a spray. And I will say it's sprayed a bit better than on my original, because there was parts of it where it wasn't painted. While it is true that there's still here, it's more evened out on this one. However, it's just a little, it's a little off-putting again, because again, it's not that bad in person in my opinion, but there's still an obvious color difference, and I feel like they could have took the time to maybe color match it a little bit better. Plus, maybe give it like a more olive green or even blue. Like they had two colors to work with, and they chose neither. Although it was like that on the original, so maybe I'll give it a pass with that one. But the sculpted details are still done really well. Like, this is probably my favorite detailed part about the figure in general, is the tail. And it could just be me, but it feels a lot softer than the original. Like, this head, like, I can literally take it. I can do it with this one, but it feels much more squishy. Like, a lot more malleable. So I feel like the plastic or vinyl, rubber, isn't as sturdy as it is, because it almost feels like it can just shear right off. And that's not necessarily a good thing. But for the overall quality, not to mention, I don't know, if the plastic just feels cheaper on this one. But the paint job is pretty much, in the mold, is pretty much the exact same. Just made with not the different materials, but just different quality of materials. So overall, I think that the blue really excels to it. And you basically get all the things you have from the original onto this one, which, hey, that's a plus. Speaking of things from the original, the articulation. Nothing's really changed, but we'll go for it anyway. Hinge jaw. Rotation at the head. So, well, not really a rotation. It's like a mild rotation. But it's like swivels here at the shoulders. I do not want to mess with it too badly because it could scuff up the legs. So the arms. I was about to go to the legs when I was thinking of it. Speaking of the legs, we still get some back and forth movement. Again, don't want to mess with it too badly because I could scuff up the paint. I know these Playmates figures are really delicate when it comes to the paint job. Swivels at the feet. And of course, a ball joint here at the tail. This one's a bit tighter than on the original. So take that for what you will. Plus, bendable tail, except it's not really bendable, it's just flexible. There's no bendy wire in it or anything. But overall, for the Godzilla, pretty well packaged, like, as far as the articulation is concerned. Now for the accessories, and I'm sad to report that even though you obviously saw the beam effect in the intro, there is no beam effect that came with this guy. Yeah, all it just did was come with Shima's, and I'm just joking. It did come with its own. So basically, it looks like this. Not really much changed. It's the exact same thing. Red beam. You essentially just plug it in like this. Come on, get that in there. That was a bit of a more lighter grip. Kind of shocked at the grip at this thing, but yeah, there you go. Oh shoot. You have your Godzilla shooting out his heat ray, and again, I still have the same complaints as the heat ray from the last one. It looks too cartoonish for my liking, especially given the fact that, like, it had a much more King of the Monsters-esque beam. Like, it was a much more thicker beam, and it didn't look like the 2014 beam. I'm not saying this looks like the 2014 beam, but this just looks too cartoonish. And especially with the simultaneously released normal Heat Ray Godzilla, which I'll pull up just for a brief comparison as far as breadth effects are concerned. This is how I'd want the beam to look just in red. This just kind of looks, again, a little too cartoonish for something that's supposed to be based off something photorealistic. So, in my opinion, it just doesn't mesh well, but again, it gets the job done. But overall, I would say the Godzilla that comes in the set, it's same thing. I mean, if you have the original, you know what you're getting with it. It's just the exact same figure, just with blue paint. That's necessarily all the differences with this guy. But still, the blue looks great, and honestly, I think it's still a plus. Next up, we're going to take a look at the tentacular monster to the set, Shimo, which I want to just say that the figure and the actual size in the movie is not represented very well. It's actually a bit undersized, which as far as like sheer scale goes, we'll talk about it a bit more in size comparisons. Well, you'll see more in size comparisons, we won't necessarily talk about it, is I think personally, because I've seen photos of it, the battle roll Shimo looks at least the closest. The giant one is just a too bit big. But let's talk about this one, which, as I've said, it's a blatant repaint of the original. So there's really not going to be much changes sculpt-wise. So first we're going to start with the head. The head features the same exact mold as you've seen with the pretty much snow white sculpt, and it features a lot of nice scaling, ridges down the neck. Here we have the pretty much circular blue eye. Shima doesn't really have a pupil here unless the sculpted round it's supposed to be a pupil, obviously. And we have some itty bitty teeth and a nice tongue painted in there as well. No throat hole, but we do have, again, more of that paint on the teeth. It's a bit hard to show, especially with the flash here, but then it kind of ruins the lighting. Same thing going on here where it has the paint here, because it's a separate piece. Where the yellow is compared to the plastic, still an obvious color difference, and the base of it is still a dark blue. However, what this one does differently is add some light blue highlights to some of the parts on Shimu's body, which is present here. We're going to kind of angle the camera up here a bit. Up here, which is like pretty much on the first few rows of fins here, as you can see, and then somewhere towards like the midsection. And I've heard reports that like they are very prone to paint chipping, and thankfully there's like not much paint chippage on mine. So I think at least for the now I'm in the clear. That is until this thing falls off the shelf, which I'm putting it at the bottom for that exact reason. And but the overall detail still kept. It has that nice translucent blue base, which obviously is like dark indigo, almost looks purple sometimes, and it again looks great. And I like the kind of color transition where it's like, again, I know it's a spray, but it really lends itself like giving like a illuminating effect, almost like a gradient. That's what I'm looking for, a gradient. But at last, this entire piece from this piece here and here right to where it meets the tail, all translucent plastic, and the row back here still not painted, but that's okay, because you're barely going to see this thing if you have it front-facing, like I am going to have it. Now, my biggest gripe about the figure, well, the original one, was that it lacked detail on the sides. That is still true here. And even though it has some mild, very mild blue spray, because there is a mild blue spray here, it's just not that good and impressive to actually showcase the overall detail as much as I'd like it to. And there's even like a small blob which actually does more than what the spray does. In fact, the spray is so mild, it almost just shouldn't even be here, because you can kind of see there is something blue in there. Like, it's a very apparent blue wash to this figure. And it's so faint. Like, at first glance, I almost didn't even notice it, but then I took a real close look, and it's throughout the entire lower section. You can kind of see it's on the bottom jaw, and leads to the neck, down to the stomach, from the chest, and is even on the bottom section of the tail, which you can clearly see right here. Plus, it's on the legs here a little bit. More towards like the top sections of the legs. You can definitely see that there's something blue. And as speaking of the tail itself, it features the same blue spray that you see on the original figure, plus the Thagomizer, which is actually a bit better painted this go around compared to my original Shimo, which, hey, take it or leave it. And honestly, I think like as far as the blue is concerned, I actually got mine defective. Yeah. If you need evidence, I'm going to bring up the box and let me show you something. I know, it's the box. But look at this. Look at that blue. Now, I know, it's a promo pick. It's not one-to-one. But I have seen, again, photos and videos of this Shimo with light and dark blue paint. And no, it's not a mild spray. It's clear as day. The whole well, not the whole underside, but a huge portion on the underside of Shimo is supposed to be blue. For whatever reason, mine, and I've also seen a lot of other listings online, this Shimo just somehow, someway, this figure, when it was, I'm guessing this was a reissue? I'd have to guess, but I've seen some as early as when they first hit shelves. So, no, it's not because of a reissue. This was obviously some sort of misprint, and it's been like this on a ton of copies, and I don't think Playmates has really done anything about it, because I just picked this up like 2 days ago. So that means it's one of the more recent batches. It's one of the more recent restocks. So why mine turned out the way it did is honestly still kind of a mystery, but it's not really cool, especially the fact that Shimo is supposed to be a frosty character, and instead I get a mild blue wash with some mild blue sprays here, here, and here. I almost went to pick this figure up had it been on its own. The only reason really why I got this thing was because it was in a boxed set, realistically. So I think I got pretty bombarded with the issues. I would honestly count it as a QC issue because it's a huge misprint. Like, you don't make some figures with blue and some of them without and mark it as the same figure. That's not how it works. Well, unfortunately, mine's like that. Maybe I might be able to track down a Shimo that has some good blue paint, but unfortunately, mine just kind of got a mild spray. It's almost like they sprayed it another Shimo, but this Shimo got like a light touch of like the little access. If you know what I'm talking about, whatever. I think that's enough, but overall, again, I do like the mold of the legs and the arms. They look fine. They look just like how they did with the original, because it is the same mold, which I highly praised. Still no painted claws, but overall for sculpted paint, again, you know what you're getting with the original. You know what you're getting here, just with some blue highlights. It's just that mine had a bit of a major defect when it comes to the blue paint. So, unfortunately, it's going to have to be a dock off a little bit for that. But what's not a major dock off is the articulation. The jaw still opens up as wide as it can and close, hinge at the neck, and can swivel at the neck. And you'll obviously see more of that blue. Swivel hinges at the shoulders, so you can kind of go forward and back, in and out like that. As you can see, swivels at the shoulders, the wrists, and nothing at the waist, but we do have swivels here at the hips. No hinge, so you can only go forward and back. And you can also go swivel 360 with the foot, the ankle, I guess. And you can ball joint, swivel, whatever you want with this one. And unlike the original, this one's not as creaky. I guess maybe because I didn't blow dry it or whatever, but yeah, it's not creaky at all. And for accessories, Shimo comes with her infamous Frostbite Blast, which, again, is completely untouched from the original. It's not a different shade of blue. It doesn't have any paint applications on it. It is entirely one detailed piece of translucent blue plastic they stick into Shimo's mouth. Which, how you do it, you just find this really long peg, stick it upward, like that. Wait, hold up. There we go, just like that. Clamp down on her mouth, or you can leave it open. I prefer kind of like having it midway, so it's like this. And boom, Shimo is opening her mouth and blasting maybe Kong away, or Scar King away, or maybe even shooting Godzilla midair. I mean, this is the Godzilla vs. Shimo set, so it makes sense. So yeah, I still have the same complaint. I wish the beam was longer. Still kind of dinky by mere comparison by what we got with the other beams, but again, still well sculpted, pretty well detailed, and I like the little extensions at the back of the throat where it, like, fans out of it. So overall, for the Shimo part of the set, I kind of got a bit of the short end of the stick when it comes to the paint applications, especially when it could have easily fixed the problem. Maybe not like giving it more detail, but giving it more substance. Some more paint applications is at the bare minimum of what I want. And honestly, while there is a mild blue spray, it doesn't really do much. I mean, take it or leave it. But I will say the figure is still good. Probably it's definitely my least favorite of the Godzilla and Shimo pack, but it's definitely still a good figure. Comes with all the things you need. Comes with good accessories. Well, all good accessories, good posability, good sculpt, and of course some neat additions with the blue paint where there is blue paint. So overall, Shimo, at least for the most part, a win in my book. And lastly, we've come to the cardstock pieces of the set, which we basically have 2 crystals and 2 rows of ribs. So essentially, again, these are cardstock cutouts. I will not be showing you how to do it because the box literally comes with instructions on how to put them together. So you need to know, buy it, look at the sheet, and work with it. So with that being said, first, we're going to take out the ribs here for just a sec, and we're going to pretty much talk about the crystals, because they are pretty easy to talk about. First up, we're going to take a look at the crystals, which are basically 2-piece crystals, which you have 1 piece to act as the sand, and the big part of the crystal, which is essentially just the big part of the crystal itself. There's really not much to say. And I'll say it once, I said in my last review, with the crystals, and I'll say in this one, these deserved to be made of plastic. It's kind of weird that they're able to produce so many actual crystals that are made of plastic for the Hollow Earth blind things, but they're not able to produce it for this set, and instead rely on the same type of crystals that come with the other set, just color-coded. If you don't believe me, they're essentially the same exact crystals, again, just different colors. You assemble them the same way, they come the same way. In fact, the only real difference is that they're made, well, they're just blue. Bluish green, I should add, like a teal, turquoise type color. But, again, the printing looks nice, and I do like the, pretty much the innovation for what you get with these type of crystals, and they do look good on a display. But the problem is, they're made of cardboard. They're not going to last. These little cardstock flimsy things, especially the fact that these are meant to go along with kids' toys, kids are just going to take them and pretty much go to town with them. Like, these things are not going to last like more than a week. But for a diorama, it's not bad. Especially if it's more towards the back of a display, that I kind of understand. But if it's more front-facing, just put it to the back, man. Just buy yourself some hollow crystals and put them there. So I don't really have a lot to say about the crystals themselves, because they're essentially the same thing that came with the previous set, just blue. However, what's not really weak at all, or actually pretty unique in that sense, is going to be these rib cages. And even though, again, I think I would have honestly preferred them being made of plastic, not cardstock, I feel like these kind of warranted being better as cardstock rather than how the crystals are made of cardstock. That being said, they are different pieces, so you can put them together and have like one big diorama, put Godzilla and Shimo in, putting Godzilla in the ribs. Oh, it's putting it a little bit more like this. There you go, close enough, whatever. So just for a closer look, we're gonna pretty much start with this one. They're made of basically the same thing, just kind of flipped. You have one rib cage that's attached to the thing, and then 2 more you have to insert, plus another one that's kind of like at the back, and it's like that on both sides, so you know it's like a duplicate print. That being said, it honestly gives the good illusion that, like, yeah, these are made of, well, at first glance, they look like they were made of plastic until you look at it and they're not. But I will say that the printed detail's really good, and it definitely kind of merits itself well with, like, the red and the blue. And even though this isn't really scene accurate to when Godzilla and Shimo are fighting, because they fight in the middle of the Hollow Earth, which is like I think the Iwi tribes, like, temple place, like the three crystal temples. I think it's like three on each side, like two on the roof. Sorry, three on the roof, three on the ground. Well, I mean, technically it's the Hollow Earth, so it's like middle. You get what I'm talking about. So now, personally, I am still, again, on the fence about it being cardstock, but I think, like, overall, this has the best execution of any of the cardstock sets, because crystals, nice little novelty, whatever. The firewalls, kind of faulty, at least on my particular copy, because they don't tend to stay together all that great. And I might end up having to tape it because I'm looking at it right now, and I could very well have to tape mine down. But these look great. Like, they add some dimension. I know, like, the lava falls also add some dimension, but these really add some dimension. And again, I know it's not very scene specific because they were fighting in the Hollow Earth temple thing, and these rib cages were not there. They are in the Scar King throne room, which kind of makes you wonder why these weren't included in there, but they're here, even though Shimo or Godzilla never really appear. Whatever. I mean, probably would have been hard to actually do. Actually, they could have done a Rio set with this. Godzilla and Shimo fight there. Maybe. Whatever. Point is, these are what they come with, and the printing on the rib cages look great. I like it. So overall, I will say that as far as the cardstock accessories go, they're good. I think visually they match the figures here better, because, like, it's easier having red and blue together than purple mixed in with what's supposed to be warm colors. So kind of clashes, doesn't it? Whatever. Overall, I think that these are probably better than the Kong vs. Scar King set, the ones that they come with. So yeah, there's that. And for some quick size comparisons, here they are next to their original counterparts, with the original Godzilla Evolved with Heat Ray, and the original Shimo with Frostbite Blast, which, if I have to honestly pick, like, a who's better, I'll go in more depth in a separate videos for these guys. I will honestly say that the Shimo here is a bit better than the Shimo here. As for the Godzilla, sheer quality is concerned, I have to honestly say him over him. His paint job is definitely better of the two, but there's definitely a plastic difference that I'm not crazy. I totally think that this one has a bit more of a durable feel than this one does. And for some more size comparisons, here they are next to some other Godzilla figures, specifically NECA, with the NECA Godzilla 2014, still my all-time favorite figure in the entire collection, and the NECA Godzilla 2024, Godzilla Kong the New Empire, Godzilla Evolved, bootleg. And for the last size comparison, here they are next to their other brethren, with the Kong vs. Scar King set, Kong and Scar King himself. And so overall, what do I think of this set? I think that this is honestly the better set of the two. If I had to choose one, it'd be this one. Why? Because one, I'm a biased person who just likes Godzilla more than Kong, and two, the color just pleases me better, I guess, because I'm more of a sucker for blues than I am for, well, pretty much warmer, lighter, cooler colors than I am for warmer colors. I don't know why. I think just blue and green are my two favorite colors, blue more. But with that being said, I definitely think that there are some duds in this. For example, Godzilla's plastic quality took a dive. My head, the rubber parts are much more squishier, especially the head and the arms. The legs feel much more hollow, on mine at least, and it just doesn't have the same plastic quality. I know it doesn't look any different, but trust me, it is definitely different. Shimo has a major defect when it comes to the paint application, especially the fact that mine lost all of its blue paint, or doesn't have it at all, and only has a mild blue spray on the bottom, and only has the blue sprays on the top of her. Meanwhile, the cardstock accessories are cool, but they're not going to last. However, I think that this set really works when you put them all together in a diorama display like this. And when you have them all together, this is when the set really shines, and you can really get a Godzilla vs. Shimo set the same way you can get a Kong vs. Scar King set. Personally, again, it's the better set in my opinion, especially when this Shimo is supposed to be painted correctly. But that being said, again, I like this set. I really do. I'm happy to have it in my collection, and I think just the color clashing together just makes this set all the more worthwhile. And again, maybe my personal bias compared to for the color blue, and here we have a almost completely blue Godzilla set. But here we are. So, again, I overall rate this set, I'm going to say an 8.5 out of 10. I definitely think that the duds are there, but as a whole set, it's really well-rounded, gives you pretty much anything and everything you want. Beam effects, 2 tentacular monsters, and some accessories that you can, well, hopefully not destroy because these things are brittle. They're cardstock, so probably should be made plastic. But again, as a display, it's pretty cool. But with that being said, it's definitely my personal favorite of, not the whole Playmates line, but definitely my personal favorite of the GXK collection so far. But with that being said, where's my Godzilla Kong and the pyramids, huh, Playmates? Thank you guys for watching. If you guys liked it, definitely subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone. Welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew. And today we're taking a look at the newly found Playmates Godzilla Energized with drone from Godzilla Kong the New Empire. This is going to be the second figure we're going to take a look at in the Wave 2 line, which again, as of this recording, I'm still trying to find Tiamat and Mothra. And we're also just going to be kind of going through the motions with this. So, basically speaking, this was honestly the one I was looking forward to probably the least. But then I finally have it in person. And let's just say I have some interesting thoughts about this guy. But you know what? Let's go through the motions and take a look at the figure. Now, first things first, we're going to start with the sculpt and paint. So, for the mold, it uses a variety of different plastics. The head is made of a more softer plastic. We're going to take a look at this here. And as you can tell, the detail here is severely washed over, where there is detail at least. So the base of the body is going to be made of like a grayish blue plastic. And the eyes are going to be painted in a kind of like a blue decked out color, which I think looks really nice. However, what I'm not really a fan of is the fact that this whole head section, and I'm talking specifically about the head, is only done in this gray. And then immediately after that, they go to the blue. Like the blue wash that's on this figure. It honestly just looks like he's wearing some sort of like neck warmer or like a hood. Which, it's kind of a reoccurring theme for these Godzilla figures to look like the paint is almost like clothing for them. If you want to know what I'm talking about, the Kong looked like he was wearing a vest. The Kong with battle axe from previous review. And the T.O.S.G Godzilla 2021 Heat Ray version kind of looks like he's wearing a vest as well. So that's kind of what I mean. But on the plus side, the teeth and the gums, they're applied actually pretty well. There's really no sloppy application done for this one, which I do admire. I also admire the fact that they actually kept the eyes, for the most part, symmetrical. This one's slightly down compared to the other one, but it's still like very mild, and they really tightened it up. But on the flip side, the blue wash that's here, I do like. I just kind of wish it was up here, more so than just leaving it blank. But again, for what dry brushing like a wash is here, it looks good. It really does. I like how very washed over it looks, very powered with energy. It definitely looks very colorful and very glossy. I do have a minor defect on mine. As you can tell, there's like some mold lines. I'm guessing that was like in the factory, like the little white specks at the tip of my finger. Yeah, that doesn't look great. But again, for the most part, it does look, the head at least looks serviceable enough, you know. But going down to the chest here, the wash kind of gets a little heavy-handed, and honestly looks less like a wash and more like pasted on paint. And it's very thick and goopy in some areas, like for example here, where the shoulders are. And it's very like mismatching when we get here where we can see more like the gray base down to like the other sections where this whole thing is made of more harder plastic. So I mean you're not gonna get like the best detail on the harder plastic. But something you are going to get a decent amount of detail is on the arms, which are also going to keep the scaling details well. Well, much like the head, the blue dry brushing just stops at a certain point and looks like he's wearing sleeves of some sort. And it just doesn't look right. Also, something I also don't like, and this goes for the feet as well, is that the arms do not have any claw paint. Why they decided to get rid of that, I have no clue. Maybe budget was spent on this blue wash. But yeah, throughout the entire body, it's kind of like very much inconsistent. And you can kind of see at the chest, which it does have some nice detailing here. But I would like to point out something, even though you probably already realized it by now. You see this Thunderbolt-esque shape carved into it? Yeah, that's a battle damage piece. And you can't get it out. So basically what Playmates did was they took the battle damage and instead of making it removable, which would have been easy to do, they just sealed it off. They just glued it and painted over it, thinking that it would just fill in the gaps, even though mine has a pretty obvious big gap there and there. Because it was designed initially to be taken off of. At the very least, the paint is consistent to the body, which isn't really saying much considering the fact of how, like, inconsistent the paint itself on the whole body is, especially from the neck to the head, because you can see more gray here, and then caked on blue. So, for this to be there, it just doesn't look flush, basically. I would have liked a more flush look. But going back to the body here, the legs here are actually, again, pretty well decently detailed. And I do like the segmenting and all the little ridges. It looks nice. And it's got that nice standard walking position. However, again, another problem I have with this is the feet are just completely unpainted. They are solid gray. Nothing on this is painted whatsoever. Aside from that little label down there. Nothing is colored. Now, granted, this may have been because they painted it before they attached the feet. But come on. At least, like, some form of dry brushing or wash if you guys are going to cake almost the entirety of the figure. And, of course, the claw paint isn't even on this one either. Which, again, why the other ones have it but this one doesn't is beyond me. Going to this part of the tail, common complaint again, it's too smoothened out, even like for this kind of figure. I definitely again would have liked it if there was a bit more detail, but considering the price point, it's alright. But you can definitely see like the blue's just very heavy-handed, especially where it meets the dorsal fins. And speaking of which, they are the translucent blue. However, because it's a newer figure, it feels a lot more gummy plastic. Like, it feels a lot more flexible than the other one, which, as far as, like, a drop in quality is concerned, I mean, I'll let that slide, but really, it just kind of makes me worry, like, how much these things are going to last. And one last thing to point out is going to be the tail, which, as you can tell, the tail is going to be standardly segmented and going to have the spray from here to here of blue. Okay, what's new? I'll tell you what's not new. The paint transition. Yeah, it seems like Playmates had more of a focus on just painting the main body and just kind of left the tail alone. Because, like, there's such an obvious transition between this tail and this segment of the tail. Like, even down here. Like, I get at the top, it looks fine. But, like, he's supposed to be completely glowing. So for this figure to not even, like, carry out the dry brushing is honestly kind of pathetic to me. And we do have a nice kind of, like, curl here for the tail. And again, it looks nice. At the very least. So, overall, I feel like the dry brushing, the blue wash, I dig it. But I don't think it's done as well as it could be because we have parts of the figure like the head, the hands, the feet, and a majority of the tail that don't get this blue wash. Which for a Godzilla that's supposed to be charging from tip of the tail to the top of the head. Because that's how Monster vs. Godzilla glows. It starts at the tip and ends with the top of the head. And especially with the eyes and the head, with the mouth. Like, could the dry brushing not be carried over? But, okay, maybe I'm complaining about this too much. But I feel like what my main complaint is, I haven't pointed it out yet. But for anyone who's a longtime viewer of the channel, did you guys happen to get a case of deja vu with this design? The battle damage, the leg position, the tail position. Yeah, basically, this is a remold of this guy from 2020. Not 2021, 2020. 4 years ago. Now, okay, let's back up here a bit. This figure is, in a lot of ways, kind of outdated. Because they would later go back and redo this figure. Let's pull this figure out of frame. Let's pull this one in. With a brand new sculpt. Well, new parts. They gave it new detailing. Enhanced detailing where there's soft plastic. They brought back the painted claws. They gave it non-translucent spines and a new tail sculpt. And they even kept the battle damage. I guess for those who like it. So, new leg sculpt, new tail sculpt, enhanced detailing, and a bit of retooling. Okay. Oh, also, new feet swivels. Also, new beam effect. So, you have a new sculpt to go with your new Godzilla Kong movie. And you want to make another Godzilla from the same film. I would have loved to see this sculpt with that new paint job. But instead, we get this. Essentially a Frankenstein Godzilla that takes the mold of the radio tower and hybrids it with the battle roar, the atomic blast Godzilla, and they mix the two together. They take the gray sculpt of this one, and the blue translucent spines of this one, and the blue eyes, and boom, you get this. I don't think that this was really needed. Like, I don't know why they decided to go back to this one, when they could have used this one. Because pound for pound, this is, like, way better. I know I'm going on a tangent here. That's what I do on the channel. Subscribe for more tangents. But why did this turn out the way it did? Especially with this battle damage piece being sealed over when he could have easily just reused it for this. It just confuses me, honestly. Okay, so maybe I'm going a bit, well, longer with this, but it just kind of begs the question why they would go through the effort of retooling a now outdated Godzilla sculpt just for them to go back and go to that old sculpt, fish it out of the archives, and then repaint it blue and sell it off. Honestly, I kind of expected a bit better because, again, like the old sculpts are fun to go back to, but like not like this, especially like with how mismatched the blue is, and especially with something that doesn't even look like the one on the back of the box, which is actually kind of evenly painted, even though it doesn't have it in the correct spot. Still, I think the paint just would have been a lot better if it was more controlled and it had it all over the body in a more, again, controlled fashion. But whatever. That's the sculpting paint. And because this thing is a remold, or not a remold, pretty much the same thing you've seen already, it also has the articulation, which hinge at the jaw, swivels at the shoulders, swivels at the hips, no swivels at the head or feet because they are square pegs, but we do have a ball joint here at the tail which can spin around. Okay, cool enough. Now, here comes the accessory, which we have this drone. Is this safe to be showing or mentioning, given all the drones that have been recently flying over the U.S. in the Northeast? Genuine question. Anyway, this is going to be, not something, I mean, Godzilla can hold it in whichever way makes you please. Hold on, let's try to find a way to make this work. Alright, there we go. So Godzilla is holding it here, or you can jam this thing into Godzilla's mouth. Just prove to you he's actually biting on it. There you go. For the drone itself, not too much detail. It's kind of a basic little vehicle. Not really much in the way of detailing. It's got some wings, propellers and such, wheels, cockpit, even though there's really shouldn't be any cockpit. But yeah, that's really about it. It's a tiny little gray piece of plastic that comes with Godzilla. Yeah, that's really about it. And for some size comparisons, here he is with all of my 2021 to 2024 Legendary Godzillas, not counting Evolved, with the Battle Roar, the 2021 Heat Ray Godzilla, the 2021 Radio Tower Godzilla, the original Godzilla with Heat Ray from the New Empire, and the Skin Godzilla from the Titan Evolution set. And as you can see, he's definitely packing the blue. And here he is next to some other Godzilla 2021 Spitfire superpowered versions, whatever, with the SH Monster, it's Godzilla 2021, the NECA 2019 Godzilla V2, which this is how you do a more jacked up superpowered Godzilla, and the Godzilla 2021 Heat Ray version from Hiya Toys. And here he is with some more classic Toho figures with King Caesar and King Ghidorah 2001, both from the Bandai America line. And for the last size comparison, here he is with the, the same day acquired Kong Battle Axe, which was the previous review prior to this one. And ironically enough, even though the Battle Axe and the Godzilla Energized both feature the same blue paint job, I think it kind of works for the Kong more so than the Godzilla Energized. And so overall, what do I think of this figure? I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm going to be, totally, brutally honest. this might be one of my least favorite Godzilla figures I think I currently own. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. Look, I know I'm saying that a lot, but it's true. Like, Playmates was on a roll with these newer figures because after, like, we are getting Kong with Beast Club, which had a totally new sculpt and did some things new. The Godzilla Evolved, which, even though, like, it's not as good as the Kong with Beast Club, but it's still a fun figure and has a lot of nice things about it. The Shimo was good, even though it needed more color. Scar King had some great posability and a fun accessory too. Suko and Doug had a great package. And even the original one, which I hailed for being too similar to the original, this is too similar to the original. Honestly, like, this figure, in the current state that it is, doesn't need to exist. I honestly think that this figure, if there needed to be an energized Godzilla from Playmates, they should have just said, screw it, make it completely translucent. Much like the Hong Kong Battle Godzilla of past years. And I still think that because look at this translucent plastic. Do you not think that this would have, like, warranted at least being a completely translucent blue Godzilla? I think that would have. And the best part is, I don't really think that I would have really cared about, like, the reuse of the mold. Especially the battle damage. Like, you don't really need it, but it's there anyway. But I feel like, again, this is what we got. It's a mishmash of pre-existing Godzilla, Heat Ray, and Radio Tower slammed into one, mixed in with a little drone accessory, which, take it or leave it. Now, yes, I should mention that this is for kids. It absolutely is for kids. But, you want to see good blue paint applications? You want to see a good, super powered Godzilla? If it needed to be paint, why couldn't it just look like this? Now, granted, maybe not on one side, but I definitely think that, like, more sporadic and, even though it's definitely caked on, but more highlights like this. But instead, this is what happens. Honestly, again, I'm not trying to say that Playmates is doing a bad job with their figures, no. I think the Mothra looks great, and I think the Tiamat looks great. But this figure definitely wasn't it. There's always going to be that one figure in the line that's going to be kind of like the major dud. I think as far as the GXK figures go, I think we found it. Do I recommend this? If you own the original Heat Ray Godzillas and the Radio Tower Godzillas, no. You don't need this. Especially if you already own the Hong Kong battle set, Supercharged, Battle Roar, any of the box variants. You don't need this. This is just another 2021 mold repackaged for the new movie. Not even retooled. And honestly, I don't think I'd be this heated at a figure if it would just have used the other one. The new mold they came out with for Heat Ray Godzilla. But, with that being said, that's all I have to say. I strangely enjoy the blue paint, but I think that's kind of about it. But, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. If you guys liked it, definitely leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, everyone.
If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. With that being said, hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're taking a look at the supercharged Godzilla Evolved with Heat Ray from Playmates Toys. This is technically a very odd case. This is a figure that actually is part of a much larger whole. If you know, there is a set called the Ultimate Titan Battle Pack, and I did take a look at that back in December of 2024 when I initially got it. However, I feel like I want to take like more individual looks at the figures as opposed to it being in one big video. And I feel like because of the figures varying in quality as you get the package, because like let's say one figure package could contain a really nice Godzilla and a really crappy Kong versus this one, and like everyone's is different. I just want to take a look at mine like individually, so giving them their own solo videos, as well as if you just want to watch the whole thing, you can just watch that whole video from December. But that said, I just also really want to give these figures a chance to shine, because I love these things, okay? They're fun repaints. I kind of give the repaints a lot of flack for constantly reusing the same sculpts. But at the same time, this one in particular, spoilers, is actually my favorite from the set. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the supercharged Godzilla Evolved. Now, in case if you don't know, starting with skeleton paint by the way, the design here depicts him in the supercharged state, where in the final battle in Rio de Janeiro, also shout out to my viewers in Rio, yeah, I see you, he basically goes like, he gets flung by Shimo and then gets pinned by a building, and then he kind of comes back up and then just starts supercharging himself to fire at Scar King. Newsflash, he misses. And this is kind of what happens. So this is basically Playmates' version of that specific design. And needless to say, the sculpted paint, well specifically the paint, is one of my favorite aspects. So first we're going to start with the head, kind of like angling the head up here with my tripod. There we go. So for the head, it uses the same sculpt we've seen twice up until this point from the original and the 2-pack, where we have basically a concept version of the Godzilla Evolved design. Keep in mind, this was not finalized. This was definitely close to final, but not the final. But the head shape is still pretty well done. I definitely like the details we have here. Keep in mind the head is going to be made of a soft plastic, folks. It has a more bluish green base, and the purple paint kind of like darkens it, quote unquote. It's still the exact same shade of color. I'm going to remove that. But as a whole, it actually magnifies the color quite significantly versus the other ones where there wasn't really a whole lot of paint or dry brushing to bring out some of the more finer details. Here, you can clearly see where all the like little bumps and ridges are on the sides of the body. You can see where the eyeballs, well, technically should be. If there's one negative I do have, it's kind of like the eyes. I don't think are really well done, because like there's really no subtlety to it. They just like, essentially they have a big, they didn't really paint the pupils, and they just have like a big canvas and they just went nuts, which is a good thing and a bad thing. But essentially you're going to be getting the purple paint all over the face. Here looks very goopy, almost looks like something out of Splatoon. The hole in his mouth doesn't really have any paint, but the inside of the mouth does have a lot of that purple paint in there as well. The teeth are more clear this time around because they're not all one solid color. The gills here are going to be painted pretty well. You can again see more of that sculpted detail, which I do love and appreciate. This side particularly, like, look at that. And of course the spines here are not going to be all painted, but they're going to be like mostly painted, which also that's a kind of a unique thing, is that all the Godzilla Evolved supercharged variants are going to be like all different to each other. So suppose you buy one, yours is going to be different to mine. But yeah, for basically the front, it's kind of where the most of the purple is. And then for the head, you can see where all the purple kind of like dials back a bit, so you can kind of see the more greenish blue. Moving to the chest area, where we have a bit more of like the lineage work, where there's like folds and details and the crevices. That's kind of where the paint's going to really shine, as well as here. More towards the side. The sides of Godzilla Evolved were never the most detailed, because you can definitely see how detailed that is compared to this. But for what it's worth, they did do their best with painting it, as far as like giving it some extra detail, and it looks good and consistent enough with the purple and the detail at work here. I will say that there are some parts where it's like not too much paint, and then there's like a whole hodgepodge of paint, so that could be a bit of a negative for some. For the arms, they're going to be standardly pretty much all purple with intense dry brushing. Like Playmates did not hold back when it came to the wash. The little elbow spikes aren't like fully painted, but they are painted, which technically marks the first time on a 6-inch figure that they actually painted the elbow spikes, which is a plus, at least in my opinion. And of course, the arm positioning, one arm kind of more out like this, and the other one on the left kind of more folding in. So it kind of like goes for a more weird battle stance, except he can't really do doesn't do the arm stretching thing that he does. But again, you can see like inside the palm, very much so, pink. Almost kind of looks like he's wearing like pink gloves or something. Or maybe this is just his blood and he's getting really badly bruised. No, Godzilla would be dead. But at the same time, the pink and purple just really seeps together, and I really do like that. For the legs here, you definitely have a lot of nice, intricate little details, especially down here with the feet. Solid pink, more towards like the copperhead info. So definitely see where they would like have painted the figure and stopped. But for the actual like little integral details inside it, it looks really nice. You can see all the little folds and crevices and scales and bumps and grooves. This part I really like, where it's kind of like seeping in the crevices and then leaves like the scales to be a bit more highlighted with the darker color, and that's something I do like. The feet though also really have just like quite an amount of just pink paint on the nails in particular. Not too much on some, like this one has a bit less than this one does, but again, like there's just so much pink. And just to talk about it, we'll talk about the plates in just a sec, but the spines here are going to be fully painted pink, and the bottom of it though is not going to be. That is also a bit of a complaint I have with this figure, is that they didn't really take the time to paint the bottom of it. That's kind of something I really kind of find a little sucky, but I mean, then again, it's fine. But the paint here is very much vibrant and is very thickly, coherently painted all the way through. And there's really like no area where it looks outright bad per se. It looks the way it should, and the tail kind of like tapers off into the thagomizer, as we can see here. And again, just kind of like show you the bottom. No, and also like it's a bit of a solid transition, so it's a bit iffy, but I think like overall, when it comes to the paint color, it looks nice. But then we get to the best part of this figure, and that is going to be the dorsal plates. I've said it, and I'll say it again. This is the best dorsal plates you will get on a Godzilla figure, like ever. So this is just so eye candy at this point. Like, just look at this. This is so cool with the pink and like the newer detailed molds. How like gummy it feels, very gummy. I mean, I know it's rubber, but it's so cool with how they did these dorsal plates. Honestly, I almost wish Playmates would just do something like this for like every Godzilla going forward. Just these amazingly detailed Godzilla dorsal plates. Like, please, Playmates, do more of this. Please. But yeah, we have basically the same sculpt as per usual, just molded in a pink plastic. And overall, that's going to be pretty much it for the actual main body. It is in the same pose. It's in the same sculpted details. It's the same mold we've seen like two times. This being the third, and then there was the fourth, which is the Godzilla Real Feel, which I do plan on picking up soon. I just need the time and money. But that said, for this guy, this is definitely like honestly my favorite one. And just part of the reason why it's my favorite is because of the paint, and I do love it a lot. So do I have any negatives? Well, again, I definitely think like there's no real subtlety to the paint. It's kind of like whatever, let's just do whatever makes it best and just have it flared. But at the same time, I definitely think that's also part of the appeal that all the Godzilla Evolves here will look different. And this one, in my personal opinion, just screams amazingness. The only real downside I have is just the fact that like the tail is painted, so I am gonna dock a point off for that. So sculpt and paint, I think the sculpt itself is all right, but it's not necessarily enough for me to really like dock the point downward. And you know what? Let's actually put like a half mark at it just because the sculpt itself wasn't necessarily the best on the main body. So overall, I'm going to have to give it an 8.5 out of 10 for the sculpt and paint. Not like a horrifically bad sculpt. It's a good sculpt overall, but the paint is what really elevates it. Next up for the figure is going to be articulation. Here at the jaw, you can close and open it up. Head looks like it moves. Trust me, it does not. It's just this way because it's on a big square peg, and if you try shearing that, you're just going to turn that, you're going to shear it right off. Shoulders can go about a full 360, but do be careful of the paint because you could scuff it up, and for some reason there's like quite a bit of resistance on mine, so I'm going to go like my own pace. Like you can see that there's like a clear edge where the paint was. So you can rotate that a full 360. Same with this arm, which I think I'm just going to go straight for it. Yep, alright, I think that's all good. Cat fur. I do have cats, by the way. This leg can go up about that far. Okay, moving the tail. Up about that far, down about that far. And the foot here can rotate all the way around. This leg can go up about that far, down about that far, and can rotate all the way around. And this tail can go pretty much in a standard ball joint where you can rotate it left, right, up, down. So pretty much all the works. With that said, Godzilla Evolved, for articulation, it's basic. It's the 6-inch basic line. Compared to the Kong and the other primates, and even Shimo, I definitely think Godzilla definitely got like the worst end of the stick, because like where's the head articulation, where's the shoulder hinges, where's the wrist swivels? Like you could have given this thing way more than what it does. And I don't really think it's fair because Shimo has it, but Godzilla doesn't. So I'm going to have to dock some points off there and say that the articulation gets a 6.5 out of 10. It's not the most, it's serviceable, but not like the most extravagant thing in the world. What's some Godzilla without some firepower, huh? Yes, it's time for accessories. And I'm happy to say, and also a bit disappointed, that this Godzilla does come with a beam effect. However, you notice any problems with it? Should be obvious. It's the wrong color. Yeah, apparently Playmates decided to bring back the red-orange beam for an all-purple Godzilla. Now, let's go over the beam. It is the exact same mold we've seen twice in the standard red, as we can see, splash effect, more cartoony-looking flames. I don't think that the beam was done well, like, really much from the get-go, so it's not the best thing in the world. Small peg. But to apply it, all you just really do is open up the mouth, aim the peg upward into that hole that we saw earlier, and there you go, Godzilla is shooting his beam effect. Yay! So really what's, like, again, the wrong color thing really stands out here. I'm going to take off the beam here just to really show. It's that there was really no reason to have the beam red anymore, because keep in mind the fins and the beam are made of the same material. So why they went through the effort of putting the spines translucent purple but kept the beam the same red, that doesn't scream, that doesn't make sense to me. However, I will say that even in the movie, the beam did change. It had a bit more spiral to it. It had a bit more colorization. There was a bit of blues, a bit of purples, a bit of pinks. It was a bit of like the cooler colors, subtracting green. It was a bit of all those mixed together. So why they brought back this, a warm colored beam, I don't know. But again, it's a beam effect. Yay. I'm not even going to attempt to rest this thing in this mouth. So honestly, that's the one major drawback to this figure, is that the beam effect really isn't that great. So yes, it's serviceable, but the beam effect was never really that great to begin with, and this isn't like the right beam. This isn't Shin Godzilla where he's all purple and he shoots the orange fire. That's not what this is. So I'm gonna have to say 4.5 out of 10. Sorry, Playmates, but you had one job and you didn't deliver on that. So can't really say that about Real Field Godzilla, where he didn't even come with a beam. So, and just for a quick comparison, here he is with the original release Godzilla Evolved. And as you can see, they are like essentially the same sculpt. They're the same height, same posability. The difference is really just about the color and the paint, which is essentially the same thing. Where this guy is depicted as the more like charge up, this one's more base form, whatever may have you. I know that there's another version. I'm literally looking at him right up on my shelf, but I'm not wanting to get him down because it's going to be a pain in the butt to actually get him back up there because I have such a unique display up. Go watch my collection video from, I think, March 2025. Yeah, so as you can see, there's really not too much differences, but they are very much different as far as the color scheme, which is kind of the whole point. And here he is with his counterpart, the supercharged, energized Godzilla base form. And what I will say is that while I did give this guy flack and this guy praise, let me just spell out the difference between the two so I can really kind of like drive home why I prefer one over the other. This is an outdated sculpt that is like 5 years old to the date, has a very lazily done paint where it's the foot's not even painted, the hand's not even painted, the face isn't even painted, and the translucent spines don't even like color match properly. And there's such outdated molds that they could have done way more versus this one where it's actually full body painted, minus the bottom part of the tail, and actually comes with a flame effect, even though it's not really the best part. But I feel like it's all part of the mold in the spines. See that? Versus this. There's clearly a huge difference. Also, here's the very crummy battle drone. And because I don't want to have to go through the hassle of literally taking down every single figure, here he is with every GXK figure I have in my collection as of this recording. So basically all the 6-inch Playmates figures, almost all of them. The repaints of the 2-packs are up there. And the NECA bootleg 2024 Godzilla Evolved. And yeah, he fits pretty much well with everyone. And so overall, what do I think of this figure? It's really good. I'm going to be honest. It is eye candy. This is basically just a figure that you just look at and you just admire and awe. Because that's essentially what this figure is. It's a gimmick figure. It's a figure that you have a very certain appeal for. Or it's a figure that you just buy for the sake of completionism. That said, do I think that there's some flaws? Yes. The articulation's a bit underwhelming, the accessory's not that good, and the paint, there's not that much paint, is really disappointing. However, the main draw feature is going to be that paint in particular, and I think it's done really, really, really well. So I think all things considered, I'm going to give this figure an 8 out of 10. It is definitely going to be the strongest figure of the 5-pack, technically 6 if you count Geo, but that's like a minifigure accessory, whatever, of the 5-pack of Kaiju from the Ultimate Titan Battle Pack. And I definitely think that when I take a look at the others, I'm just going to like review them on their own and not just part of a larger whole. So again, 8 out of 10, I feel like that's a fair rating for this guy because his paint just elevates him that much. I love his paint. I love his sculpt, like his sculpt. Articulation, serviceable, and accessories kind of stupid, but hey, that said, that's my personal consensus. Thank you guys for watching this video. I know I'm recording this in May, summertime now, not officially, but I consider May summertime. It's heating up, no more snow. Assuming you don't live near the polar regions, it's time we go vacation. much like Rio de Janeiro. I don't actually know if I would go to Rio for a vacation. Maybe I would. But hey, you know what? That's fine. But yeah, hope you guys are enjoying the first start to your summer. I want to start out big with brand new figure reviews of some old ones, plus some new ones I've got coming in. And who knows, maybe the Kong that goes with that one pretty soon. I'm teasing it. I'm getting it soon. But yeah, I think it's time we end the video. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone. Godzilla Evolved has, well, evolved again for the 4th time. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Matthew, and today we're taking a look at the next entry in Playmates' Godzilla Kong the New Empire line, now branded as the Monsterverse line, particularly the next one we're going to be taking a look at today, the Godzilla Evolved Real Feel version. So this is the 4th time, count them, 4 times, the original 2-pack, the big like 5-pack Ultimate Titan Battle Pack, there you go, and now the Real Feel Godzilla. So, being the 4th variant of the Godzilla Evolved sculpt, there's a lot that I'll have to say, but also not a lot in the grand scheme of things. But this is going to be a different review because the whole point of this figure is to feel lifelike, which we already did the Kong, which, spoilers for that video, I didn't really think it was that great of a figure. I thought the overall execution of it was a bit on the downside. I mean, I want to like it, I do like it, but there's a lot of aspects to it I feel like are holding it back from being the best figure it could possibly be. However, the Godzilla Evolved here does have a bit to live up to, given the fact that it needs to justify its own existence. So with that said, does this Godzilla really justify its own existence, or is it just, yeah, another milked sculpt? Let's find out. So, yeah, sculpt and paint. Not really a whole lot to really like cover here because, again, this is the 4th time we're taking a look at the sculpt and paint. But with that said, we're going to go through it anyways. So I'm just going to come out and say the detail has not changed. Sculpt and paint, or the sculpt itself, not changed. What has changed is the material, the colorization, and the paint job. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Taking a look at the head sculpt here, which pretty much features the exact same details as we've been accustomed to. Okayly detailed mouth, with actually pretty good paint applications for the mouth, and overall pretty good detailing for the scales and such. However, the big draw here for the figure is that the whole figure is going to be made of a flexible gummy plastic, and is all going to be entirely made of rubber to give a more lifelike effect. Which I don't know if it's right for Godzilla, because Godzilla wouldn't really be considered squishy. Yes, living creatures are considered squishy, like take a human and squish them. There you go. But at the same time here, I don't really feel like there was a lot that Playmates could have done to really like give Godzilla's own identity. You can't really flock Godzilla because he's not fuzzy like Kong is. But for the detail work we do have here, I do like the sculpt work for the sides of the head and the gills. Those make a return here. For the top of the head, it's okayly done. I do like the colorization here for the dorsal plates here at the top. Those look pretty mean and very hot pink, and especially that spray, which gives off like a gradient effect. That looks awesome. The eyes are more boxed in like the 2014 eyes, but are that different pink color. Inside of the mouth, detail-wise, not too much anything at the top of the mouth. You do get that hole, that very slightly hole. And we do get the teeth making a return as well for the sculpt and paint here. The teeth are actually a bit pointier, at least it looks like to me, than the previous Godzilla Evolved. I could just be from memory because I didn't pull one out off the shelf yet to compare them with, but kind of focusing in here for the teeth. Well, really just pulling in, there you go. You can see that it's very much more smoothened over. It has a bit of nice detail and like fleshed out stuff. It has a bit of yellow gunk. I don't know what that's from. My guess is that that's actually from the Beast Glove from Kong. Because like that is actually pretty stuck to the figure. I can kind of get some of it off, but I'm just going to let that be. Anyway, for the actual detail at work here, Yeah, I do like the way that the tongue is painted, being a much more vibrant pink. And the way that the teeth are painted, I don't really have a whole lot of complaints with the teeth. The spray on the bottom, though, being a white, that's an interesting choice. I would have never really thought white would have been the way to go, but it's here, and it's actually done pretty well. And I do like the way it looks here. Also, if you noticed, they actually changed the color of Godzilla Evolved here. Instead of being a more greenish color for the base, it's actually the correct color that should be charcoal. Like, thank you, Playmates. You actually fixed it for this release, which is already why I actually like this figure, generally speaking. But going down, which we have the chest, which is going to be a lot, pretty much the same amount of detail here. We have the white spray that kind of continues on from the neck, but to the sides does kind of lose a bit of that. But we do have some decent, nice sculpt with the folds in the skin and the scales. For the arms, we do have a bit of them, like as far as the detail work is concerned. Because the arms on the original figure were made of a softer plastic, they were always the more detailed part of the figure compared to like something like the chest and pretty much the entirety of the abdomen. But again, you can see all the intricate little details, and the sculpt work just looks amazing. Sadly, the claws are not painted this time around, understandably so. But what's actually an improvement is the arms. They're actually more closer to how they were on screen. Yes, originally they were like much more serrated. Here they're a lot more simplistic and actually just have them like more towards the elbow like it should be on both sides. That's how it should be. And they're painted. So Playmates really actually did something, like actually gave this guy a bit of an improvement, which is awesome. For the sides of the figure though, that's kind of like where my praises end a bit. Well, not really end, but you can see this nasty seam line, and that was because this is on the original figure. And my guess is that they took the sculpt of the original figure, not necessarily the model, but literally rescanned the original figure and made some changes to it, and this seam line happened. Because the seam line doesn't carry through to the legs, and it's obvious that there was something here, like there's no opening here, and it just doesn't look that great. And a lot of the detail throughout like this side, which is a lot of the problems I had with both Godzilla and Shimo, is that the sides of the body were not that detailed. Here I do kind of stand by that, but the softer plastic does kind of help negate that a bit. So at least there's that. For the well, just to give a better view, for the legs here, they're actually pretty long and pretty well done. Like, this actually does have a bit of the rubberiness to it. Like, just gonna show you, very gummy. The limbs especially. But we do have a lot of the nice plating and armor detail, more towards from the top of the leg to the kneecap. And then down here where it kind of gets a little smoothened out. Then the feet, sadly not painted. Although I just kind of realized that is a big toenail. Look at that. I don't know if that was like that already, but whatever. So, but yeah, there's actually no like hollowed out stuff here at the bottom. There is actually just blatant copyright info, which is pretty cool. And I mean, does that count as paint? It's painted on, so I guess so. I think it's like a unit number type thing. I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyways, yes, it continues down with that white spray from the chest down to the crotch and where it meets the tail. And before we do talk about the tail, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the dorsal plates. These are beautiful, like absolutely beautiful. They are a lot more closer to when Godzilla's like actively doing his atomic blast, like as far as the colorization goes. It's not exactly a red, even though it shows red pretty well on camera. They're actually more of like a shiny purplish pink. And the reason why is because, again, because there's so much of it, they all kind of like get absorbed together color-wise. And I just kind of realized this. That one's kind of out of place. No, whatever. But yeah, the detail work just looks so good. And you can tell Playmates is just really ramping up the detail work. And it also kind of color matches, maybe not 100%, but this is probably the closest that Playmates has ever gotten. If I were them, I would have just probably done the whole thing translucent. I mean, please, can we get like an all translucent Godzilla Evolved? That would have been killer. But yeah, a bit more detail towards the like around where the body meets the tail. And then we get to the actual tail section, which is all flexible, even though there's no bendable wire in there, but is going to be made of like that rubbery plastic. Sadly, no white paint on the bottom of it, but we do get that purple spray here a bit more towards the bottom side of it. And the pink spray is just on full effect here. Like, this is just, visually speaking, so beautifully done. And especially because, again, the tail was made of a softer plastic, it had a lot more detail and a little bit more leeway compared to other Godzillas within the line. So you did get a fair amount of detail with this thing. But yeah, all the little intricate little segments. There is like a bit of like scuffage on mine because, well, probably just from transit or something. But aside from that, the actual like execution of it is beautiful. The paint's right where it is, and there is like a little bit of a gradient, so it almost looks like it's glowing. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without talking about the Thagomizer. Ooh, just look at that. Look at those serrated tail tip blades. Like, this is actually really nice. So yeah. As for like one final look, here he is from the side. Here he is from the back. This side again. From above. From below. And from the front. So, for the real feel Godzilla Evolved sculpt and paint, even though technically, so to speak, this is going to be the 4th time this sculpt was used, I would honestly say that, like, sculpt and paint wise, this is the best executed done of the entire like line. It's really well done. The detail work carries over from where it actually does have pretty well done detail. And my only real like absolute gripe about it is going to be like the side pieces not being like overly detailed. Like, they're pretty softened out. But they did fix some parts, like for example, painting these and giving the spines the correct color, as well as changing the body color. And the paint that's here is really well done. If I did have any more complaints, again, it would be like the smoothing out. I feel like that can have been fixed. The seam line making a return because it's obviously not supposed to be here because it's all made of rubber, and the claws not being painted even though they are on the original. But that said, I think that realistically speaking, this Godzilla, I'm just going to say it gets an 8 out of 10 for sculpt and paint. It is absolutely visually beautiful and really just a lot of fun. Next up is articulation. So for the jaw, we have a hinge, which we can go open about that far, close up about that far, just like that. For the head, there's actually nothing here, which I was actually kind of surprised about. For the arms, we actually do get a bit of a rotation here, which, yeah, we can just go a full 360. This arm, can this one also do a full 360? I forget. Yes, it can. So because there is a bit of like rubberized material, you do get a bit more like leeway when it comes to like the overall flexibility of it. For the legs here, which we can go kick up about this far, down about that far, and hold on, let's actually address that quickly. This leg, we can go up about that far and down about this far. And if you remember, there was feet articulation on the original. Here, there is not. And I do understand why, because the feet probably would have popped off every now and then. But as for the tail, we do get a singular ball joint here for the tail. And we can go a bit side to side. And of course, the entire tail is fully flexible. I do have a bit of problems here for the articulation, because there's always going to be that problem. It's when you have them in a neutral position. Let's actually kind of like get them like this. So everything's kind of like sound, but every now and then he'll topple over. Here, I think he's pretty much structurally sound. Let's actually try and like move his arms forward a little bit. Okay, apparently it's wanting to make me look like a liar. Yeah, the last few times it made it look, Godzilla would fall over. And I'd like go to the washroom, they'll both be standing, and then I come back, boom, Godzilla's falling over. But on the flip side, I will say that as far as like the articulation actually being here, it's surprisingly serviceable, and like I'm surprised Playmates was able to pull off such like different points of articulation on a figure like this, being just pure rubber. So I do have to commend Playmates for what they did here. That said, I'm gonna say that I don't really like the fact that they got rid of the feet and they never really bothered to include the head, because this would have been a perfect opportunity to give him a head joint. I don't know why they just don't want to give Godzilla Evolved a head joint. You did it with 2014. Why stop there? Anyways, I'm going to personally rate the articulation a 7.5 out of 10. And unlike Kong, who will absolutely destroy his own material as he spins, this Godzilla's rubber will not do that unless you really want to rub him up. So yeah. And so for the first range of comparisons, here he is with all of the other Godzilla Evolveds released in the line, with the standard version, the 2-pack versus Shima Walmart exclusive version, the Target exclusive 5-pack Ultimate Titan set, and of course, the one y'all came to see, the Real Feel Godzilla. Now, I'm going to be doing a much more detailed, in-depth analysis between all 4 of these guys, but if I had to personally choose a favorite, and I'm not saying this because he's the newest, I'm gonna say I personally think the Godzilla Evolved the Godzilla Evolved Real Feel version is my personal favorite. I mean, I might as well just say more towards like the not just the comparison but the outro, but long story short, I think he's just the most well executed of them. While these other ones have problems, and he definitely has his problems, I just think he's the overall best executed. And for those also wondering, since I don't think I mentioned it yet, he can technically fit the heat ray into his mouth. Let's try to at least squeeze it in there a little bit. Doesn't go in all the way because of the rubber and the peg hole size. Color-wise, it doesn't really match a whole lot, so I really don't recommend it. But I also really don't recommend it is... and my camera. See that? That is a rip in the rubber. Yep. Just by pegging it in. Unfortunate, but that's the way it is, I guess. And here he is with another another rubber Goji, being the Godzilla Titan Evolution figure with the actual like Godzilla Evolved inside of it, just so he can at least look a little better. And what I will say, it's almost like a match made in heaven for these two. Only he could fit inside him. And color-wise, this guy really reminds me of that of the next comparison, the NECA bootleg Godzilla Evolved. Which, yes, NECA never made a Godzilla Evolved, but you can kind of see what I mean, right? Charcoal black, grayish bases, pot pinks for the dorsal plates, and kind of like a white/grayish stomach. You can kind of see what I mean. As well as the tongues, they're like nearly the same color. Like it's almost scary of how close these two are. And here he is with some classic Toho Godzilla stuff with Godzilla 2001 and Godzilla 1989 from Monsters and NECA respectively. And finally, here he is, well not and finally, but here's another bonus comparison I just decided to throw in. Here he is with the Battle Mechagodzilla, and you might be wondering why this specific version. It's almost scary just how similar these two are. What I mean by that is not only are they identical like designs of Godzilla having bigger elongated arms, skinnier proportions like Mechagodzilla, but the color of their dorsal plates are nearly the same. So really, they're like darkened versions of the original counterpart. Difference is, this guy doesn't come with beam, this one does. Although I do wonder, what does it look like with the beam? Probably won't fit. Actually it does kind of fit. Not a, like, perfect fit, but there you go. Honestly, I've seen worse. And finally, here he is with the Real Feel Kong. And what I will say is that of these two, I definitely am going to prefer the Godzilla over the Kong. Just because, like, the actual execution of the gimmick just works a lot better for Godzilla rather than Kong, because there's a lot less problems with Godzilla's more rubbery material than there is of Kong's flocked material. And Kong will absolutely destroy himself over time if you keep swiveling the joints, while Godzilla, he's pretty much new and fresh, and he'll continue to stay that way as long as you treat him with care. Although there is the chance of him pretty much melting away if he gets too hot. How ironic. And so overall, for the Playmates Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, Godzilla Evolved Real Feel version, what do I think of this guy? Well, let's kind of talk. He's a great figure. I'll just say, he's great. Where Kong was okay, this guy is actually really great. He has a lot of nice details, especially for Playmates. He has a lot of nice mobility to him, even though he doesn't really stand necessarily the best. And even though I kind of wish he had an accessory, the rubber material does kind of make up for this. And I just love the overall, like, visual aesthetic this thing has. Just having these hot pinks against the dark and blacks and white stomach lining. If I really had to give a recommendation to this thing, if you're fine with just collecting the same sculpt over and over and over again and just want like an army of Godzilla Evolved, go ahead. It's $10, Target, Walmart, whatever. At least in the States. Other countries, depends on what the price is. You know, could be 10, could be 20, could even be 30. I don't know. Those tariffs are going to be a problem these days. But as per my personal rating, I'm going to say an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I enjoy them. Now, you could color me biased and say, oh, well, I just prefer Godzilla over Kong. Well, that's technically true. There are some instances where I prefer the Kong release to the Godzilla release. For example, the base Godzilla Evolved versus the base Kong and Beast Glove figures. I actually prefer the Kong with Beast Glove over the Godzilla Evolved. That said, this time around, it really seems like Godzilla is king here. And, well, as we'll do with the outro, let's go ahead and turn off the light here and bring in this. Because, why? Because I just want to bring some melodies back. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If moving forward, Playmates does decide to do more Real Feel stuff, I would love to see what a Real Feel Ghidorah would feel like. Or a Real Feel Mothra that could be very silky and bendy. Or even a Real Feel Mechagodzilla. Don't know how they do Rodan. But anyways, that's all I've got. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, everyone.